Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's time for Better Call Saul. This is Rob at Smirking Gun Reviews, and it's season 4, episode 4. It's called Talk. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do some talking. Full spoilers are ahead on this episode. There's just like a lot of little details here. This is kind of like we're almost at the halfway point of like the season, I would say. And so we kind of hit a filler episode, but filler episodes on shows like Better Call Saul are filled with character. And I was trying to think of the theme that we had this week, and you can disagree with me, but what I chose to pick to talk about mostly was jobs. Everybody in this episode has a certain job that they're doing, and it's kind of like how each person is trying to do their job on different levels. And so let's just start with, let's start with Kim. Okay, so Kim, and I gotta backtrack, sorry. I want to thank everybody that's been commenting on the videos, especially just like the last week's video. I like to really thank the people that are commenting about Kim's status. Because I've never known anybody that's like committed suicide. So the fact that a lot of you were talking about how suicide affects people in these certain ways, I really appreciate those. It made me think a lot more about why she's been behaving the way she is. Is it completely that way? Do we know it's completely that way? I don't know, but those comments were very valid and very interesting. If they are true, it does explain a lot. So anyway, to get back to the show. So Kim has decided to start sitting in on court cases. And this is just a nice, interesting thing because the judge is paying attention to her quite a bit. And I do believe, I could be wrong, but the actor who plays the judge, I just love these little details, so you're going to have to forgive me. I think the judge is played by Ethan Phillips. And if it is Ethan Phillips, the thing I always see him, and I remember watching him on a show a long time ago called Benson with Robert Guillaume, and just about like a bunch of people working in a governor's office. And I don't know, he's one of those guys that I just can't get out of my head. So every time I see him, I'm like, Benson. But he's been around for a really long time. He's a nice little character actor. What I noticed, I love the little court case that we don't really hear anything about, but just that guy who's representing himself. I really wish we had heard more about that case because the way that guy seemed and how he was, and the fact that he was representing himself. And the fact that, we hear about there was a bench warrant out for him. I really wanted to know a little bit more about this case, but that's not the show. It's not this guy's show. So the judge asks her to come into his chambers. And so he's eating and everything. And she goes in there and sits down. And he notices she's had an accident. She's clearly kind of looks upset. She's suffered trauma. And he tells her about this case. That she tells him about Mesa Verde and all that stuff, and so he's like, oh, she's into banking and everything, and he tells her about this case that would she like to be possibly be a part of, and he starts telling her this like really messed up case, it's something that a lawyer would really, really love, and I love that it just turns out to be the plot of a movie. And this is some really good writing in this scene too. Just this show just keeps knocking these kind of scenes out of the park as far as like writing. Scenes that could be just banal or bland or just run-of-the-mill average, talking scenes, always have like this unique touch put on them. And so like this judge is like, she tells him, it's from the movie The Verdict, and he's like, yes. And if you're trying to use my court to find your love of the law again, let me tell you something. that's not going to happen. Like my court cases, you're not going to find that case. You're not going to see that case that makes you go, oh, yes, I got it. This is why I do it. And so she's trying to find meaning in her job again, because she's the trauma that she's suffered and with Chuck's death and everything, and things that she knows about like that around Chuck's death and everything. She's lost a step, and she knows it. And so she is looking for something. And I love that he's in a sarcastic, kind of trying to be kind of funny way, and letting her down gently a little bit. He's trying to tell her, look, you're just not going to find that here. Whatever you need, it's just not going to happen. But, he goes out there, and she just is sitting there plugging away. She has faith. She has hope. She will maybe find that story. And that's really all we get for Kim. This episode just kind of has little character moments. There's only one kind of driving story in this episode, and that's with Nacho and Gus and everything. But we'll get to that. So then we have Jimmy. Now, usually, the guy that's better called, that's Saul in the show. You'd think he'd have a bigger part to play in this. But again, it's just more really good characterization going forward to see where this character's headed. So, he gets this phone call in the morning about, getting a job. And like I said, what was it? Maybe the episode 2, maybe episode 1. Whenever he got it was when he went to get that job at the copy place or the printer place. I said that I don't think he plans on taking any job. Not really. He's just killing time before he can become a lawyer again. And out of his boredom, he is taking these, what do you call them? Interviews. And so he's playing the part, and he's running through the motions of it all, but he's not taking jobs. He's coming up with excuses because he doesn't want to do anything else but be what he was. And when he's not doing that, that's when he gets into trouble. That's when he starts being like Slippin' Jimmy. It's when he starts becoming a little bit more like Saul. So he doesn't take the job. He's like, oh, sorry, whatever. But when Kim presses him about seeing a shrink, he immediately just, okay, how do I get out of seeing a shrink? Okay, I've got a job. And so that's how badly he doesn't want to talk about what happened. He'd rather, call these people back and get a crappy job working at a cell phone company, or, that sells cell phones. And so they want him to be a shift supervisor, and it's not a terrible job the way it sounds on the phone, but then you get there, and this is not his type of job. There's no one there. I guess maybe back then, I don't know. Cell phones have never really been that important to me. So I don't know how busy cell phone sales places were early on when they came out, because this is when they were this big, and it was we're talking in the early 2000s. So yeah, I guess a lot of people had them, but I just don't know how blown up the business end was. So he's at this dead store, and he wishes he could go to a different one, something that has a lot more going on, but it's just not happening. So he ends up just kind of wandering around the store, listening to bad music, and then, doing a Steve McQueen on the glass door with the ball, like in The Great Escape, just kind of ba-boom, ba-boom, counting, boredom. But then he goes and, he goes to see Ira. Now, I'd like to point out that, yes, I'm sorry, I pointed it out in the comments last week, but I forgot that was Ira from Breaking Bad, from season 5 of Breaking Bad. He was such a minor character that it just went right by me. And when I say minor character, I mean he out of the characters in that season, it was Todd that ended up being the major character of that group. So Ira kind of zipped right past me. But now we see him, he goes back to Ira to get the share of his money. When he sees how much it pays and everything, and how this guy, he'd like to do some more jobs like this. And that gets Jimmy, perked up again. And now he wants to, find more things like the Hummel job to do again. So it's a bad sign of him going kind of back down that road again, just to, whatever. And so he goes back to his job, and I guess maybe he's trying to get fired. I don't know. Maybe he is trying to drum up business. When he writes and paints on the doors and the whole build, the whole side of the business, is the man listening? Privacy sold here. I don't know if they're going to like that very much. I guess if he gets fired, he'll be like, well, I was trying to show initiative. If like Kim goes, how'd you get fired on your first day or something? It'll be like a way for him to explain why he doesn't work there anymore. Because leave it to him to find a way out of this job too. So like first we got Kim trying to deal with her job. We have Jimmy trying to find a way back to the way she used to do her job. Jimmy just trying to get out of doing this job until he can do what he wants to do. And then we have Nacho. Poor Nacho. Okay, so at the beginning of this episode, we see a deal going down. And they're at this really kind of shady place where this guy goes in and sells some drugs to these guys. It turns out it's one of Gus's guys that sold these guys the drugs. Well, then we get Nacho and the two Salamanca nephews that are like Tweedledee, psycho. And they're scoping out the place. That's where Nacho is told, yeah, that's the car, this is the place, they're the ones who ripped us off, they're the ones who killed, my partner. All this is like, they're blaming these guys. So you can start to see the picture already taking shape here, that they took the drugs. I mean, this is how great Gus Fring is at being like this mastermind. So when Nacho takes it upon himself to take out Hector Salamanca, that was not part of Gus's plan. But the way Gus is able to take that and make that plan and work it to his advantage is just fantastic. Because you take a thing where it's like, okay, we have to figure out a way to not let the Salamancas know that we killed their man, we ambushed them, we took their drugs, we got to put it on somebody, right? So let's put it on these guys. We'll sell them the drugs that we never even gave Nacho. We're going to take those drugs that we said that got stolen. We're going to sell them to these guys, our competition. And we're going to set the Psycho brothers after them. Make them think that they're the ones who jumped him. And then they'll take him out. And then we'll have their territory. And we didn't have to do a fucking thing. It's brilliant. They're getting the guys that they hate to do their own dirty work in the midst of just trying to cover up the fact that they just killed a guy. Just one guy. And they figure out a way to work it to their advantage. And that scene just shows how, I'm not going to call them badass, because they are evil motherfuckers. But they are fearless. They just go in there stabbing, just fucking people up and just blasting people away. I mean, I swear, I know that they're safe because I've seen Breaking Bad. But Nacho doesn't know that this is going to happen. He doesn't know how this plays out. So this is crazy scary for him. And what does he do? Because he's still got, he's still really wounded. But then when he sees the truck come that's going to kind of ambush them, he decides that even though he knows the plan, even though he knows that the Salamancas are being played by Gus, he still gets out to help. Because his guilt on both sides, like he's like his loyalties and things like that are being tried. He doesn't have to get out of that car to help them. He could let them die. In fact, later we find out, I think that was the plan, to let them die there. But Nacho won't let them. And that's a really interesting thing. But again, I still say that that's going to be his downfall. I had a comment, at least one, of like people thinking that maybe Nacho survives this. And I hope he does, but I honestly just can't see it happening. I think that he's a tragic character in this show. I think that he probably will somehow die, but maybe for something good. I don't know. But he goes in there and he tries to help. but they don't really need that help, because where one brother is, there's another brother, and they just take out the whole fucking place. Two guys take out this whole crew, and they had that place on pretty much lockdown, and they got their drugs back. So they, in their eyes, they just took out the people that hit their guys, took their drugs, disrespected their family name, and now all is kind of making it right with the world. And Nacho looks brave for them. That little nod, you barely get anything from these guys. A nod speaks volumes. So he's in their good graces, but he is messed up. Nacho is feeling it bad. And so when he shows up at his dad's place, that's his, he probably shouldn't be there. But I don't think he knows anywhere safe to go. He needs somewhere to feel safe. Right now, he is anything but safe. I do hate when people get on the phone immediately and they got the 911 caller hanging on the line. It just kind of annoys me, like, hello, sir, here's the 911, what's your emergency? They're just standing there with the phone for like ever. And sir, there's like emergency, what is going on? Just hang up the phone right away. I don't know, like, I just always feel like, how many people do that on 911 where they're just sitting there like taking up somebody's important time where somebody could actually be in need of help, and they're just sitting there like, anyway, it's a TV movie thing. Hopefully it doesn't happen that often in real life. So that's Nacho dealing with his job. And he has Gus, and he has to see Gus. And he's telling him, like, he knows the plan. Like, you took that, you did all this. This is you, like, And Gus finding out that the Salamanca brothers, one took a hit, but they all bailed south to wait till the heat, runs out. Will they be back? Is this the last we see of them? Because of timeline purposes, do they ever come back across the border? I don't know. I hope we do, because they're just too crazy to like kind of miss out on them. I don't know. They're enigmas in the Breaking Bad world, because we know where their story goes. So any kind of like extra bits that you can get about these guys, maybe a little bit of information, or maybe that's what we're not meant to know, is anything about these guys, which is also got its own benefits. So Gus just tells him to rest, and that's where he ends up with his dad and everything. So that's Nacho dealing with his job. Now we have Mike. Now this was great because, again, from the beginning of the episode, we're seeing this guy, putting together like a piece of like it looked like he was gardening at first, but he's putting down cement. And then you see the kid that's been standing there watching his dad put all this together writes in the cement, Maddie. And we know that this is Mike. And we go right from that memory to Mike sitting on the couch of the group that talks about, the dead, whether it's a wife, people that have lost people, and it seems like cops or people like that, or just bereaved people, a group, people that have lost loved ones. And he just says, he wanted me to talk, so I talked. And that's how they start it. And so you're supposed to go in typical fashion, we'll get back around to it. But what I like about the scene is more than that, is like the thought, the memory. Okay? Because in that scene, when we get back to it, let me just stay on track. So we'll get back to that in a second. So Mike goes to the diner, he meets his friend, and this is where they get into this conversation about the group. And this guy in the group who Mike believes he keeps talking about his dead wife, but that Mike is convinced that he doesn't have a wife, and he's been lying to the group the whole time. Cop brain. That's what I'm going with. That he's good at listening to people and people that lie and change their stories. He's used to dealing with criminal minds. So he can't like just separate some kind of screwed up person who's telling lies in a group from, criminal minds. But he's probably right? You know, like Mike just knows this kind of crap. You know, like he's got to tell. He rubs his wrist. He talks about Wrigley Field, which is great. I always love it when people mention the area, sort of the state I live in, where Wrigley Field didn't have night games before, you know, a certain date. You know, it's just all these little details. And Mike's from Philly too, so it's like he just knows shit. He just knows his shit. And so everything this guy says just doesn't add up to Mike. And so they make like a $10 bet that she comes to group, and when this guy starts lying, you know, she has to pay up. But things don't go that way. Because they're in group, and Stacy starts talking about Maddie and how she's starting to forget Matt. That she made breakfast, and it was the first time during breakfast that she didn't think of him. And you can just see Mike just, man, like Jonathan Banks is acting here like just the internalizing of his building like anger. Like it's as if he is becoming pissed at her for how dare you forget my forget my son. Or it could be just, you know, just general emotions, to just thinking about it, because that's where I think, like where Mike lives, that memory that I was talking about in the beginning with the writing in the cement. I think Mike lives in those memories, that he can't stop thinking about Maddie because of what Maddie represents, you know, that Maddie was the good cop, and Maddie's goodness and is a reflection of his badness. And it's always like that his son died being good. You know, he died a good person, and Mike has been bad, and he still gets to go on, and he just constantly has these memories of his son. So he can't ever forget. He can't ever let go. So to hear the woman that that his son married, that, you know, claims to love him, could be forgetting him, I think that it's possible that he's just seething now, like, and he needed an outlet. And here comes dude, walking all in, all, you know, calm, and hello everyone. And it's that he's a great character actor. He's been in everything. The last thing, you know, he plays Captain Holt's husband on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's Parks and Rec. He's been everywhere. So it's nice to see this guy, you know, in here just for a minute, just a brief little role, where he plays the guy that Mike thinks is lying. And again, he starts talking about his wife and how they wanted to go to Australia, and he starts rubbing his wrist, and Mike can't do it because he's already set to blow. And so he just goes off on this guy. I'm not going to go into detail about everything he says, but he just rips this guy a new one. Like, come on, tell me you're lying. Tell me just tell him you have no shame. You know, I can go find out and go to the library. I can do all the checking on all this stuff. So just tell him you're lying. Instead of that, he gets up and leaves. So it's kind of like an out for that guy. Like he could always say, well, he was just upsetting me and I left. And that's where you get, well, I talked, you know, he wanted me to talk, I talked. And we get then to where Mike is at Madrigal. And I'm telling you right now, I wish Mike worked at the warehouse where my company gets their stuff, because if he looked at the trucks that come to my place before they get sent to me, I would always have perfect pallets of product. It made me wish that people gave a shit about their jobs as much as Mike cares about his jobs. Whenever he has a job, it is always letter of the law. And I gotta respect that. Good work ethic, all that, despite some of his obvious criminal tendencies. But then we get the call from Gus. And Gus has him come out there. And this is where Gus confronts him about knowing about Nacho, and that, you know, and the whole thing with Hector. And he's like, I told you that I wasn't going to kill Hector, but I wasn't going to be his bodyguard either. And he's like, well, if you're going to make a move, I mean, this guy has balls this big. And it's all just about a job. And we have to wait to find out what that's going to be. But again, this is a filler kind of episode, but just so much character development. And it's just fantastic. So, yeah, if you were expecting some great big, you know, thing. It's not here, but you need to have to develop, episodes where you can continue to develop your characters. So much good story in this kind of universe comes from that. So I'm starting to stumble here and running out of things to talk about, I think. So I'm probably rambling. But anyway, that's it for this week. Can't wait for next week's episode. It's like a Mad Men. The trailer for next week was like a Mad Men trailer. You don't know really what the fuck is going on. You just like have people saying random things that are way out of context. So I love AMC's trailers. They give nothing away. I wish more trailers did this where you just don't know what the hell is going on until you actually see the episode. So anyway, if you like this video, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that jazz. And that's it. This is Rob for Smirking Gun Review saying we will see you next Monday on another Better Call Saul. Otherwise, check out all the rest of my videos on my channel. We just did Preacher finale. We did Sharp Objects, which I have a ton of views on, but everybody hates. Not everybody, I'm sure, but a bunch of people hate. I got a lot of thumbs down on that one. So anyway, this is Rob. Have a great night. We'll see you next time. Bye.